Okay, everyone. Episode 25. It's on the. Your. Go ahead. What was that, James? Okay. You got like Biddy for a minute or something. I don't know. Like we got This Week in Linux on the left. James, I have one video of myself as a human jack-o'-lantern in the middle, and those of you who are watching this channel probably already know who the hell I am. So, anyways, I guess we'll start with the installing from outside your repo one. That was asked in the private questions, and I replied back to him. First thing on that, Jordan and me were talking about this before we got started. I'm not sure it's just experienced users who are finding this software these days. Because like you were saying, you think it's only people who are geeks and are going to go looking for something outside the repo. Because more and more software is making... Okay, that echo is going to drive me nuts, James. More and more software is making Linux versions of stuff. It's like if you go to the Flash site, like if you go to Adobe's site, there's a link there for a Linux version of Flash. It may not be the link for your son. And if you're using some XP or Windows or Mac piece of software, more and more of them are, oh, by the way, we have a Linux version too. On that stuff, I see people finding that before they get in the habit of going in the repo. So my honest recommendation on that, although that isn't what I told that person because he or she did not fall into this criteria, was first thing you should do is launch your package manager and see if there's a version in there specifically optimized for your distro. Like in PC Linux OS and Ubuntu based distros, it's Synaptech, represented by like a software box and a CD icon. I'm trying to think of what the other package managers are because it's been a while since I've messed with them.
PackageKit in Fedora.
PackageKit in Fedora, okay.
And then Arch's Pacman.
Okay.
Or GTK Pacman if you want to do it graphically.
Is that one of them was like Chicken Manager or something? Is that one still predominant or something?
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Okay. It's if you can't. The way I told this person to do it was I sent them into terminal, and I don't like to do that, but that really is the most foolproof way to do it. A lot of installers are GUI, and I really wish they were all written to the standard that Git OpenOffice was. However, everyone's not doing that, and I mean, you were saying like you can go and compile the binary. I'm thinking if you're new to Linux and whatever piece of software this is hasn't put it in a .rpm, .deb, or .sh wrapper, whatever wrappers right for your distro, you probably aren't ready to mess with it if you have to actually take the binary and turn it into a wrapper yourself. I realize there's a lot of there's a pro and con of that. My personal opinion is the people who are, I have to compile it myself to know they didn't do anything to it, are wearing tinfoil hats. Or do y'all think I'm a little nuts? You know the ones I'm talking about. They're like, if I didn't compile it myself, I don't know. It's...
The majority of them I've heard from are more on the side of, I have to compile it myself to get that extra 2% performance boost out of it.
Oh, so they're I need that extra... They're like the gamers who I need that extra half a frame a second
yeah.
that I can't see anyways.
Yeah. There was a guy I'd spoken to a couple of months ago who was talking about how he spent hours and hours compiling Wine in an ultra-optimized fashion so that he would get extra frames in his games.
Well, no, that's the thing. It's when you go and compile something, just like compiling your own kernel and stuff, yes, you can get a performance increase out of this. But this isn't, I push a button and it's done 30 seconds later. It's, I push a button and come back on Friday and come back Monday, in some cases next week. depending on what you're doing and depending on your system. It's the fact that somebody else has taken the painstaking effort to compile it for me in a wrapper for my system. I'm inclined to, unless I just don't trust the source at all, use that.
Well, I mean, how does really compiling yourself make you really know what it does? It's not like you're looking at all the code. You're just looking.
Well, it's the same thing. It's like what's the best? It's the same argument with what's the best way to compile the kernel. There's some purists out there who refuse to do that using any kind of GUI. They're like, I have to do it using command line because only then do I really know what I'm doing. And I mean, like you say, you're a crazy person if you try and do that manually and go through all the code. And like you say, I don't know anyone who really does.
If you don't, then you still don't actually know exactly what it's going to do. So
you don't know everything. The theory, as I understand it, behind that is if you're actually looking at not the whole file, but the source for the specific parts, you know what it's messing with. So if something goes wrong and you're dealing with a real customized distro, you have a general idea to quickly go, oh, it screwed this up, or oh, it's looking for this here, and I should point it over here, and little simple things like that. But unless you've really built a tweaked, customized the hell distro where instead of having your home folder be home and your dev folder be dev, because really these folders could be named whatever the hell you want, but we've kind of unofficially agreed upon a standard in Linux, which for the most part it's here or there or something, which is part of why it's a lot easier to make these wrappers now. And if you've gone completely nuts, you'd kind of need to look at that anyways to help it know what the heck to mess with. But aside from that, I think it's killing yourself and making a mountain out of a molehill to really go back and do that. At least that's my consensus. I kind of got the feeling earlier you agree with that, James. Or do you think there's a benefit I'm missing there? I mean, Jordan, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, I used...
the other Jay!
I did a review of Gen 2 a little while back, and I wasted... Well, I don't want to say I wasted. I learned a lot.
You learned a lot about Linux.
I ended up losing a total of about 2 weeks to it. Just, learning how everything worked and how to compile everything. Of course, you aren't doing everything by hand there, but...
You're still doing a lot by hand.
Yeah, the amount of time invested, the ultra optimization that you can do to it, you might gain a lot of performance out of it, but how many hours are you going to spend doing it? Well, it took me, I think, 8 solid hours to get to a GNOME desktop on Gen 2, from start to finish.
Right, and that's the thing. What it comes down to is how much is your time worth, and are you the uber geek who just, this is like your cocaine, you enjoy doing this for the sake of doing it. If you're not one of these people, I really don't see the benefit of doing that. It's on the same token on a server side. You will have a hard time finding any out-of-the-box distro that is as secure as a Slackware distro where you bothered to take the time and sit there and manually assign what it and add every single permission you're going to use and everything else. But the hours it takes to do that, I think I've done it exactly twice in my life because it was called for. Aside from that, it's like I refuse to do it because it's like you're not up and running day one. You're okay, now I have to go configure everything, and I just don't see it being worth it in most cases. And there's a whole mess of people that'll disagree with me. They're like, "Oh no, you must always do this. You must always kill yourself so that it's absolutely perfect." Until it isn't perfect.
I'm a big fan of the mantra. I say it a lot, to each his own. There's always going to be one person that wants to compile everything. There's going to be a whole slew of other people that want to have everything pre-compiled for the sake of convenience. So if you want to do it, that's cool. That's one of the great things about Linux. You do have that freedom of choice.
Well, no, and I like the fact that Linux is the only OS, with the exception of maybe BSD, that somehow all of us diametrically, I mean, I'm not saying the three of us do, but overall the community is composed of various forks that diametrically disagree with each other about what the best way to solve this problem is. And yet somehow they all get along and they're civil and they go, well, your way works for you, but my way works for me, and let's just leave it at that. Say that again.
Not all of them are civil.
Well, okay. The purists are never civil, but
latest post, but he actually talked about tribalism.
Yes, there's a little bit of that. I keep waiting one of these years for.
Especially for the Ubuntu and stuff.
Well, yeah, no, that's the thing. It's like, what is it? At some of the Linux conventions, they like pass out Nerf guns, and the intent is to have these. They like put two distros that are diametrically disagree with each other right across from each other, and they want them to fire Nerf guns at each other again, but they refuse to do it. Although I think they really want to sometimes. Anyways, the way I told this guy to do it, and if there's a simpler way to do this, y'all feel free to chime in. I told him to just browse to wherever he or she downloaded the installer. In this case, it was PC Lens, so it was an RPM. And I told him in Dolphin to just go to Tools Terminal, which would open the terminal right in that folder, so they don't have to worry about CD browsing to it or anything. So if they're not used to terminal, it's better they just start in the right directory. And then I had them run the SU root to switch to the root user, put in their password, log in, and then since it's an RPM space -I space the RPM installer file name. Jordan, you prefer to use the list command. I use dir. One of them's prettier than the other, and I said, if you know, so it's you can type it manually, but you're better off to just type dir first and copy and paste it. and the only thing I warn people about if you're going in terminal is, Jordan, I don't know if you know why this is, because I have no clue why this is. For some reason, terminal copy and paste is not copy and paste. There's a shift added to the commands. So if you type
the reason for the copy, at least, is because Control-C kills a lot of processes.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like in Record My Desktop, I forgot about that. It's okay.
Control-C for killing processes. That was before copy and paste. But
right.
What are you talking about? Copying and pasting from dir and ls? Because there's actually.
Well, because you have to type the file name exactly. And sometimes they're weird names. Like in the case of his son, I didn't bother to look up what the actual file name was for the installer. And the easiest way I found, especially since Linux is case sensitive, is rather than even try and especially if you're new and you've never messed around a terminal, I find the likelihood of a novice user making a case error or just a plain simple typo screw up increases exponentially, especially if it's multi-case or has any special symbols in the file name, which is sometimes the case, or it's been named .this, .that before the extension. They're better off to just list the file, highlight the name, and paste it. That way there's no possibility of them mistyping it at all.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I was just wondering what was the difference that you were saying that you used dir over ls?
The main difference is dir is just a directory listing. It's no color, no highlighting. If you use the list command like Jordan likes, different file types are different colors. What colors they are and how that's done is going to vary from distro to distro. Aside from that, all the extra commands and everything you add and all the information you can get is identical. It's just whether you want fancy colors or you just want a plain listing. I'm perfectly okay with all monocolor in terminal.